so excited to be here with you this morning. I am excited that Nathaniel reached out and asked me to speak today. And here, let me click ahead here. There we go. I got a chance to talk to partners in policymaking recently, and that's where Nathaniel heard me. And how many others of you were on that partners in policymaking? Who's heard Sarah Finger talk before?
Yeah. On something else. I produce on the Mental Health Council.
I see familiar faces and names right now. So some of the stuff, I say every time I'm on a call, so don't mind me if I repeat myself. I am really excited to talk to anyone that wants to have policy and decision making happen with them instead of to them. So I put together a PowerPoint for the Partners in Policymaking presentation. I didn't have any official presentation, and Nathaniel asked that I would put one together. And this is something I've done for the last couple years, considering how tough the political environment and policy and advocacy has been. And so if anybody is turned off or doesn't want to see the cute animals, it is my way of trying to talk about policy and advocacy while giving you something to smile at, because it's hard to smile sometimes at what's happening in the advocacy world. So the whole presentation is full of cute animals, if that's okay with everybody. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of click through. And you're still seeing everything okay, or hearing me okay? Great. Yep. So I'm going to guess that any of you who are joining today might also feel exhausted and feel anxious about kind of the world today. We all are feeling overwhelmed, and sometimes when people call and ask, oh, Sarah, hi, how are you? And it's one of those things where it's just such a loaded question, right? Like, yeah, how do you answer that when we do feel overwhelmed? And it's just about keeping our heads and our hearts above water, right? And just trying to get through these days. And so I just want you to know that my whole presentation, hence the really cute animals, and what my presentation today is going to talk about is how our organization, as a policy advocacy organization, wants to remind anyone who is, again, interested in having policy happen with them instead of to them, how we can do that together and how we're going to get through this really tough times. Our organization, so some of you have heard this already, we've been around now for 18 years, and I founded the organization in 2004, and we're still here 18 years later, and we have kept our same vision. So, when we're successful and we're on the cover of Time magazine for achieving our vision, we will have seen that every single woman in the state at every age and every stage of life is able to reach their optimal health, safety, and economic security. So we really look at the full spectrum, and we purposely were created to address legislative threats and opportunities to women's health and well-being. And we recognize that it's not just about one's physical health, but one's mental health, one's financial health. And so you'll see a little bit more about kind of what we tackle when it comes to issues that impact our health and well-being. How we reach that vision is that we work every single day to engage, to educate, to empower individuals like yourselves to basically be heard in this process and be effective advocates for positive change. Again, I love these animals. Maybe you all have a favorite if you love one of these animals. And so our focus every single day is not to be in the state capitol and necessarily speak for all people in Wisconsin around these issues, but to really create a movement of individuals who are informed, involved, and inspired to make a difference. And so that's really our organization and how we function. Here we go. Some of the issues, as you can imagine, if you think about things that impact women's health, safety, and economic security at every age and every stage, that's a lot of potential issues, right? And so this is just a small list of different issues that we might tackle on any given day. And because we are, a small, innovative, scrappy nonprofit, any day we can wake up and say, we need to respond to what's happening around the lack of paid family medical leave, or we need to address the disparities that exist around maternal and child health in the state for Black women versus white women. And so we're ambitious in the sense that, we know that there's just not one issue or one bill that can solve the issues around women's health and well-being. And so we understand the intersectionality. And not only do we, look at a full range of policies, but we purposely pair with so many organizations that are experts in these different specialty areas. And that's why I'm so proud, to work with Disability Rights Wisconsin and the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities and Kids Forward and the Lung Cancer Association. We work and partner because we want to recognize the intersectionality and all the different ways, again, policies can hurt or help us. And so that's a little bit about the policies. This is one of my favorite pictures. So the other thing I want to recognize as we kind of start today is that when we talk about policy, we don't just talk about quote unquote big P policy. It's not just policy in our nation's capital or in our state capital, but we consider policy to be anything that is decided on that impacts us in any given way. So policymakers, you often think of those elected, especially the president, but there are policymakers, decision makers everywhere, right? And they could be in our places of employment. They could be the local media. They could be our friends and family. They could be city council members. They could be in healthcare systems. And so when we look at how to advance good evidence-based policy that is informed by the people, we don't just limit ourselves to trying to get a bill passed in the state capitol. And especially when it comes to the tough environment we have right now when it comes to policy, it is really toxic. I hope you can all appreciate, right, how I'm trying to say how challenging the legislative environment is. It's so partisan right now, and it's so hard to get good bills even given a hearing to talk about these issues, that it's really important that as we look at how to influence policies at every level, that we don't frustrate ourselves and just look at that one way, like in the state capitol, because we will really drive ourselves insane trying to necessarily work that one angle that's kind of broken right now. And I'm happy to talk about that today. But I just want to remind everyone that just because, again, we're not seeing success in policies in maybe one area, that there's always other areas of influence and other decision-making tables. So our saying is that if you're not in the policy-making kitchen, you're on the menu. And it's the same kind of idea that if policy happens, it's going to happen either with you. Do you like that one, Ramsey?
Yep.
Yep. I mentioned this at the Partners in Policy Making. Yeah, this is one of my favorites. I don't know how I found this. But that idea that there are so many reasons that or so many barriers that keep people from even finding the door to that, hypothetical policy-making kitchen or decision-making kitchen. And one of the biggest reasons that I think I mentioned this, Ramsey, at Partners in Policymaking, is that one of the barriers to people going near that decision-making kitchen is that people think they need to be a sous chef to even enter or go near that kitchen. There's this idea that you have to be an expert, that you have to have all of your facts, that you have to be ready to defend anything you speak out about. And I'm here, to work with anyone that wants to overcome that perception, that, even if you've never, again, this is hypothetical, right? But I am not a good cook in real life. My kids will tell you that my specialty is pigs in a blanket, and that means like crescent rolls and hot dogs. I am not a good chef. I am not a good cook. But that being said, in that kitchen, somebody needs to fold the napkins. Somebody needs to taste the food, right? Somebody needs to cheer on or, cut the onions, whatever it is. I don't have to be a sous chef to be in that kitchen. It's so important that at some point we overcome those barriers and we figure out how to be informing and helping to make policies, or ultimately, again, we end up on the menu. Does that make sense? Here's where, again, I can't see the chat, so let me know if feel free to stop me at any time. I love this concept because I said in the beginning, we're all feeling overwhelmed. We're all trying to figure out what can we possibly do to make a difference. And is it Mira? Is that how you pronounce your name? Is it Mira? Yep, I love that name. Sometimes people can feel like, oh, it's up to Mira, it's up to Sydney, it's up to Ramsey as themselves to try and take it all on and change things. And the truth is, what's beautiful is that there are so many of us that care and have the same kind of vision for our health, our well-being, our communities, our support structures, that we have to constantly remind ourselves that we're not alone. And what makes this so exciting in terms of it doesn't have to be this broken way that it is now, is that when we as a community, we have these common visions, have these common concerns, there's no greater power than when a community discovers what it cares about and decides to work together to form policy and to be heard in the policymaking arena. So another quote I love, is alone we can do little, and we can do a lot as individuals, right? But together, by giving ourselves a structure of support and resilience, that's how we're going to actually overcome these barriers, to encourage each other, to support each other, and not get so burnt out and really continue to feel alone and overwhelmed in this process. I think I mentioned I gotta go back. There was a book that really helped me after the 2016 election, where I was really scared and thinking, what is going to happen around policy, and how are we going to survive this? How are we going to get through this? And this book, Emergent Strategy, she's a woman, a Black woman she loves science fiction stuff, and she basically reminds us that if you look to nature, there are really powerful examples of resilience in nature, and how different structures and animals and living things in nature have found a way to survive it all and to thrive amongst it all. And one of the examples is geese. And the idea that when a flock of geese flies south for the winter or whenever, I don't know if they're coming back, Ramsey, is how cold it is in Hudson. Maybe they're not back yet. They're still in the warm weather. But that example of how it's not up to that one goose to lead the entire flock the entire trip. They give examples of how geese take turns, and they allow different leaders at different times to lead and others to follow. And that if one of the geese is injured or tired, that it can stay back and another goose will stay with it and support them. And then they'll go and they'll catch up with the flock. And I love that analogy because, again, it's so easy to, again, feel overwhelmed and alone and just lost in terms of trying to figure out, how do we change the way things are? And that is what has helped me as someone that gets to do this every single day. I get to wake up and I get to be a full-time advocate, and that can get really overwhelming. And here I am talking to amazing individuals like yourselves who are like, how do we make a difference, Sarah? And the last thing I want to do is give you, a sense that it's hopeless, to give you a sense that, it's all on your own shoulders. What I hope to do today is remind you that we can look to these examples and find ways to create this community and this network so that we can practice radical self-care as we become more engaged and be somewhere in that policy-making kitchen. Oh, hi, Nathaniel. Oh, muted.
Yep. Hi. Thank you I had a meeting that I had to couldn't reschedule. So thank you for coming on here today, Sarah.
No problem.
And
no problem.
Where are you at with this presentation? It sounds good.
Where am I? I'm kind of in the middle. I'm giving a pep talk.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for coming today, Sarah. And
Hey, Sarah, I have one question. This is Randy. What was the name of that book you just mentioned?
The book's name, here, I'll put it. It's Emergent Strategies. And I'll make sure to send that to Nathaniel too. So it's a book called Emergent Strategies. And I read it a couple of years ago, and it's still one of the more important books to remind me to breathe and remind myself that we'll get through this.
Who's the author?
Her name is Adrienne Maree Brown. Okay. And I can send that to and make sure you get a copy of it. And she has other books too, but that one, Emergent Strategies by Adrienne Maree Brown.
Okay.
Yep, Nathaniel Ramsey welcomed me and got me set up, and so this is the PowerPoint, and I'm just kind of working through it, and we can go back and however you want to handle it. This is what I have up on the screen. I said during Partners in Policymaking, I didn't get a chance to show slides. So when you invited me and said, go ahead and do a PowerPoint, Sarah, I was explaining that, this is not an easy topic. This is a tough thing to talk about. So I put a lot of cute animals in my slides to try and give something to smile about as we talk about stuff that's tough.
Correct. Because I think that we do have to bring in the tough topics, but we also have to have some humor with those tough topics, but make sure that everybody understands that you have to be aware of what's going on.
So yeah, I said, this is something I've been doing for the last couple of years. These cute animals have been in most of my presentations. And so I can follow up, Nathaniel, and figure out, what else besides for cute animals you want in content. But yeah, so this is just another slide that shows, I think I also mentioned this in Partners in Policymaking. Is anybody a singer? Anybody like to sing?
I am not that great of a singer, but
yeah.
I am not a good singer either. I'm not a good cook. I'm not a good singer.
Don't say that. I was bad at cooking, and I may be making this for my parents, and they're very strict. You can be a good cook, Sarah. Come on.
Well, no, I mean, okay. So the slide I put together before was that, you don't have to be an expert chef to be in the policymaking kitchen. And I was saying how that's the reason why some people don't even, look for that quote unquote policymaking kitchen, because they think they can't enter unless they're a sous chef. And so I was giving an example that I'm actually not a good chef in real life. But there's a role for all of us. Someone's got to taste the food, right? Someone's got to fold the napkin.
Yes.
So the parable of the choir is another example where choirs, the nice thing too, I guess, with a choir is that I don't have to be the strongest singer, but together with a group of people, maybe my bad voice gets muted a little bit, but I can still help contribute to the song. And what I love about the parable of the choir is that if someone gets tired, if someone, their throat gets a little dry, the nice thing about having a community of people singing that song is that one person, right, can take a step back, catch their breath, clear their throat, and the note goes on, the song goes on.
Correct.
And again, this is just another example of the kind of self-care advocacy that I've been promoting as we are called to be more engaged in advocacy and policy decision making. I'm so sorry. Again, I kind of see some chats. I like to sing with my mouth shut.
No, I was just answering. I
see it now.
Yep.
Thank you. I was having a hard time with my PowerPoint and the chat, but now I see it. I like that, Mira. And so this cute little, I don't know if it's an alpaca, I don't know if it's a llama, but this image and these words are basically meant to remind us that, when we feel overwhelmed and we don't know where to begin, to take time and reflect, we're still here and you're having these really important conversations and you have built this community. To the extent that we want to, again, celebrate that we're, still here and still meeting and still sharing our visions, and just to take a moment to pause and to give ourselves time to care for ourselves at a time when, again, we're being so compelled to do, to fix things and to engage. Let's see. So this is what my favorite kind of, how do you pivot, right? So you don't need to be an expert to have something concern you, to have something keep you awake at night, to have something, challenge you. And your reality is your reality, and no one can ever deny that. You don't have to have a PhD in the issues that impact you. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have a paper written on it. The truth is, all of us can see different challenges and things that aren't right in the world, in our life, and we can imagine a different way. We can imagine that it's not, this incredible challenge. What does it look like if some of those barriers were to be taken down? What does it look like if we had different policies and different structures? And so what I love about the possibilities for all of us is that the more that we can overcome, again, all the intimidation or the confusion about where to be the best advocate, and just start reminding ourselves and articulating to ourselves, what is it that we imagine would be better? What is it that challenges us now? And what does it look like if it was different and better? And then to declare that, I think so many people are resigned. The word resigned, we talk to a lot of people that just say things will never be different. There'll always be a lot of money in politics. They'll always be making it harder to vote. We'll never have paid family medical leave. We'll never expand Medicaid. We'll never do these things. And there's this sense that, I just have to accept this state of things. And I don't buy that. I feel very strongly that the reason why policies and systems aren't working for us is that we have not been heard in this process before. And so for more of us to go forth and to share, you know, what we see as a challenge and how we see it differently, and to create an echo chamber to start, you know, creating a conversation locally in our families and our communities to say, well, here, I'm going to stop for a second. And Ramsey and Nathaniel, you heard this in Partners in Policymaking, but I wanted to share that we estimate less than 7% of people in the state of Wisconsin can identify who their state senator and their state legislator are.
Yes.
So,
and so
go
I
ahead.
don't want to, but at People First Wisconsin, we're trying to come up with ways just to pick up the phone and call your legislator. I mean, I got one future Partners in Policymaker to send an email because she was just so scared. So I actually had to go through the steps to actually send an email through the app, so she doesn't have to like call up the legislator. And I'm like, well, that's a good first step, but we have to work on what is the boundary. Why can't people with disabilities just pick up the phone and call and leave a small message, a short message, and just introduce themselves? And I think that is where the barrier is, because I think once they get through that barrier, then we have all the materials that they would just have to read off. And see, that's the biggest. I think that's what I've come across in my living well work. And
No, and that's a great reminder. There's not one way to be an advocate, right? There's not,
correct.
you don't have to conform to what is told, you know, to send that email or to go to the Capitol. There are really powerful ways, like getting more people to know who represents them. Because if you don't know who represents you in the state Capitol, you know, how can you inform them and talk to them and introduce yourselves and tell them your story? And then how can you know what they're doing for you or, you know, to you? And then how can you hold them accountable? Sydney, your question, are legislators taking Zoom meetings? Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Yep. I think I just got done with one like a week and a half ago with my legislator.
Because I've had them for DPS with federal legislators, but not state or local. So I haven't gotten that far because I'm more comfortable on Zoom than the phone. So I'll probably pursue that.
I love that. I think that's so powerful. And, you know, a lot of us weren't comfortable going to the Capitol with COVID and, you know, without being necessarily protected. And so, you know, I had a lot of my contacts through phone and Zoom over the last couple years. And absolutely, here's the bottom line is that these individuals that many people don't know who they are, they work for us. They're there to represent us, right? And so for you to kind of make yourself known, and like Nathaniel was saying, send an email that's more personal, just to say, you know, like, hi, I'm Mira, I live here, this is what I care about. Just want you to let you know, I'm paying attention and I'm a resource for you. And just to, you know, make that phone call, I said, you know, some people, maybe Sydney, you know, you don't like the phone if someone's on the other end of the phone, but you can call in their offices are closed and you can leave a message where if you might feel intimidated that you have to talk and maybe, you know, feel like you don't have, you know, everything you need to make your argument. I often call at night when nobody's there and just say, hey, this is Sarah Finger. I live in your district. I'm really concerned right now about paid family medical leave. And that's all I have to say. And that is so powerful because think about it, right? If less than 7% of people know who these individuals are, you sure as heck aren't calling them. And you're not kind of like reminding them, hey, I'm one of the people you work for and I'm paying attention. So to Nathaniel's point, I mean, anything at this point to connect with people outside of even, the people that are typically recognized, like in Washington, D.C., city councils, county government, state legislatures. That's where most of the action is happening, is in the state legislature. And if we don't start, again, helping more people know who works for them and connect with them and share our stories with them and hold them accountable, we're going to continue to be on the menu instead of in that kitchen. Were there any other questions? I kind of going through.
Well, here's the thing, Sarah. What we through the absentee ballot, if you want an update in our township, if you want an update, Sarah, when we got our absentee envelopes, we had mail-in boxes. By a week later, my dad had to go to 3 different areas just to drop off the mail-in boxes. And I'm just saying, like, learn your clerks, your municipal clerks. Try to know people that know the system, because I think every day, I think every week, this changes to voting rights. And
Absolutely.
yep. And the reason why I brought that example up was because my parents were very stressed out about it. And I'm like, what happened? What happened from point A to point B? Well, you never know what's going to happen from point A to point B. So I'm just saying, I hate to say this, but do your own research. And because I think that people, have their personal lives, have their professional lives. So it's up to us to, do whatever you can to make sure that you're able to send in your vote.
Absolutely. That's a decision that somebody made, right? There was a
Correct.
group of people that said, nope, we have it in our head that it's not a good thing to offer this convenient way to submit your absentee ballot. And I vote absentee every single time, just because I don't know what's going to happen on election day. I don't know if I'm going to be sick. I don't know if my kids, I don't know if I'll have to be helping a family. I don't know. And so I always vote ahead of time. And again, somebody at some point said, wow, these are unnecessary. They hadn't heard the stories of any of us that had benefited from these drop boxes and had decided, unilaterally, like in their own bubble, nope, we're going to make those go away. And so to your point, Nathaniel, like that's another decision, right? Somebody in some table in some room that did not represent maybe individuals like yourselves or, the actual constituents, they were doing things to people rather than with people.
Exactly.
And that is one of those things that we have to push back. And again, my hope is that in the future, our representation is much better at these decision-making tables and that we're more connected to these decision makers so they're not being done in isolation and again, to us rather than with us.
Correct. And there's so many points I want to bring up here, Sarah. I think it's how to speak to legislators and have that gentle presence, but also have that firm presence, like you mean business. And you work for us, like you said, the senators, the legislators, everything else. People work, who's over on the legislature, they work for us. So you think they would expect to help the disability community. And sometimes that doesn't happen. So what do we have to do? We have to advocate. We have to tell our stories. We have to do so much work, more than an average I hate to say, an average citizen. And that's where you shine. If you can get over that hump, and what Sarah just said, if you listen to Sarah and take her ideas, you'll be able to tell your story, but be as effective as possible too.
Well, and to that point too, so before earlier on, Nathaniel was talking about how that whole parable of the choir, right, is that it is ridiculous how much we're expected to do to kind of fix this broken system. And again, there are some individuals who it's that much harder to be heard. And it's that much harder to hold people accountable when they keep changing the game, right? Like they keep changing voter, requirements and voter ID or drop boxes, or again, they make it so you only have to show up in the Capitol, and it's just ridiculous. And so the point to some of the emergent strategy and that look to nature is, again, as we're really swimming upstream, and it's really difficult, how do you lean on each other, and how do you turn to organizations and individuals like myself who are here to help you through that process? Because it's not always easy to navigate. It's not always easy to know where to start or who to call, or who your county clerk, or you were saying the clerk is now one of the most powerful people, the people that are actually counting the ballots and sending out ballots at your local municipal clerk. We can help with those things. And I just think it's so important at this point that we recognize that we don't have to do this alone, that it is really tough, and we have to practice self-care, that I love that you have these conversations every month and you have this community, that we have to lean on each other. And oh, thank you, Sydney. And that we have to, again, just not be resigned to think that this is the way it has to be. And so the thing on the screen right now is just saying, I'll actually go to the next slide. I think you all can appreciate, because you have these conversations, but there's a lot of people who have never been involved in advocacy to the extent, like maybe they ask, they lobby and say, this is what I want for dinner, and this is what I'm advocating for this to be my dinner tonight. But so often, people think of advocacy and they don't appreciate how long it takes to see change. And I know that's not something easy to listen to, but I love this quote, right? You don't eat the fruit the day you plant the seeds. And sometimes, it can take a year, 2 years, 10 years to see good policy change, to see better voter rights and better voter support. But we have to start somewhere, right? And you plant those seeds, and we take our turns tending to that garden. And eventually, yeah, it's a long game. It is not something that happens overnight. And we need to start creating this expectation that change takes time and it takes work, but it takes a community and a movement of us. Slowly but surely we get there. And so, again, I don't know if that's what you were looking for today, but I try and remind anybody who looks to be an advocate that this is something that doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, but again, with the right seed planted, with the right tending to that garden, with the right staffing of that garden, right, with the long-term plans, we get there. You guys sick of my cute animals yet? So in this one, again, going back to the point, like, what is your vision? Nathaniel, is it that I just want to hold my leaders accountable? Is it, I want to be heard. I want to make sure that decisions impacting me are informed by me. Sometimes it can be, I just want to make sure that we don't have food insecurity. It really is hard to watch my kids and their classmates. People are homeless and struggling right now, right? Like, I want people to have the dignity of opportunity. That's my personal vision, right? Is that everybody has the chance to be their healthiest, they're safest, they're most economically secure. And I don't have to have a policy. I don't have to show up to my policymaker and say, please support Senate bill, blah, 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 because it'll help everyone be their healthiest, their safest, their most economically secure. I don't have to do that. But that vision of mine, it doesn't have to be tied to a piece of legislation. Sharing that, knowing who my policymakers are, and sharing that, and reminding policymakers that we are here to inform and to help guide decision making that they might not have expertise in. Our personal vision is really powerful that way. Our personal experience is really powerful that way. Does that make sense? Oh,
I
there you
think
go.
the personal vision is the most important thing on this whole, from what I've listened to, I think this is the most important key, because we want advocates to speak up for themselves, and we're not going to do it for them, okay? But we have to find the middle ground on why. Is it the policy changes? Is it we have to make the laws into plain language so that everybody can understand? Is it so there's a lot of questions that I have in my head that when you're talking, Sarah, I could go on and on, but I want everybody from this meeting, I want everybody to feel like they can contribute in different ways, but also take that risk, take that dignity of risk, and call up your senator, call up your legislators, and see how it feels. And what do I mean by dignity of risk is that you take a risk, but you have solutions, so the risk doesn't affect you. And I think that if we use that approach, Sarah, I think that might be the boundary that everybody is, because there's so many laws coming at you every single week, every single day. So how do we put that into the personal vision when a law can be changed like every day? And I think it goes back to just being yourself and making sure that everybody understands the language so they can do that, so they can take the next step. And I think
I
that's
love
why
that,
we
Nathaniel.
go ahead.
I mean, and I think that's what gets challenging, right? Is how do you mentioned that so strongly, plain language. And we often, get into the weeds of policy, and we start bringing up acronyms, and we start bringing up laws, and that's not how we recruit people in this movement. How you bring more people into that choir or into that flock of geese is that you say, this is what I believe, and people say, oh my gosh, I believe that too. I see that vision too. And I think people, no matter where you are in the political spectrum, I think people can appreciate that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution.
Correct.
And right now we have 132 state legislators, and we're a women. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna mute you, Nancy.
There we go. So 132 state legislators, and we're a women's health organization, right? And so if I look at the makeup of those 132 individuals, only 1/3 of them right now identify as women. So already right now, we do not have representative government in our state legislature on our issues. And I mentioned this on the Partners in Policymaking. We work on a lot of issues related to communities of color and disparities. Right now, only 11% of our state legislature identify as people of color. So you don't have representative government there. And I mentioned this too, that less than 1% of people in our state legislature right now identify as differently abled. So you really don't have representation right now in the state capitol. And that's fine to the extent that you don't have, to be a senator or to be an assembly representative, you're not expected to know everything. You're not expected to have experienced everything. But that's where you have to be humble enough to say, I don't know what it's like to be Nathaniel. I don't know what it's like to be Denise. I don't know, what it's like to experience this or that. And so I need to be humble enough to say, I don't know, and to be guided by individuals with that experience and that insight. And that's why that first phone call or that first connection to say, hey, I know who you are. You work for me, I'm paying attention, and I'm a resource for you, becomes so important, because if that policymaker is humble enough to say, I don't know, but I want to learn how this could impact any member of my community that I'm elected to serve, then that's the opportunity for them to reach out and say, I don't know what I don't know. So tell me, inform me. And now I know Sydney's a point of reference and contact for me. That make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And I think that try to be bipartisan when you copy legislators. Meaning, just because you vote for a certain party doesn't mean that you can't call up Republicans. Doesn't mean that you can't call up Democrats. But listen to them and also respect them. You don't have to agree with them, but if you show that honesty and if you show that professionalism, you will be able to build relationships with the opposite party you don't vote for. And I've gone to different districts to speak my message, because I think 4 or 5 years, nobody would call me back from my district. So please reach out to other legislators and if you cannot get hold of your get hold of your local ones, because they go to the same assembly, they go to the same Senate. So why not? Knock on as many doors as you can. That's what I said.
Well, and we can, again, as an organizational partner, sometimes people don't find success, trying to communicate with their own elected representative. But we can help you say, oh, well, there is this person who actually heads up the committee where this issue is being debated. There are other places, people of influence and decision makers who might not represent you, but are in important places that do want to hear and understand how policy is going to actually impact individuals. This is, and I'm going to send, Ramsey asked me to send you this PowerPoint, so I'll do that, Nathaniel.
Yep.
This is the same kind of stuff you're talking about. Form relationships, do it early, make that contact, start small. A huge way to make a difference right now is just, you can go to myvote.wi.gov, or you can go to whorepresentsme.info and find out who those people are and save their contact information and have it ready, and maybe make a call. Again, maybe you make a call to your local municipal clerk tonight, just saying, thank you for what you're doing. I'm so excited to be heard in the elections upcoming. I just want to thank you for what I'm doing. Here's the information. Yeah, so it's so powerful, and it's such a good exercise to say, I didn't know where to start. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know if this is going to solve everything, but I am, again, going to at least get near that door of that quote unquote policymaking kitchen. I'm realizing I'm almost out of time and I'm so
It's okay.
sorry.
It's okay. No, you're fine. You're fine. I was the one that was late and everything. So take your time.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I want to be available, you know, not just today, but anytime for anyone to contact and kind of help say, Sarah, this is what's really pissing me off. What can I do? And who's the decision maker, right? Like, who gets to decide this, and why is it so bad? And why is it, you know, it's pissing me off, Sarah, what do I do? And, you know, I might not be able to, you know, help you immediately do something, but together, either, you know, organizations like ours or other advocacy organizations, we can help you navigate that and say, you know, who is the decision maker? You know, who is someone that will ultimately like listen and maybe amplify your story and help get your insight into the decision makers who need to understand consequence. You know, policies are words on paper until they understand how it actually impacts or how it gets implemented and how it hurts or helps people. So yeah, so I mean, I think you get the idea. I didn't want to go into a ton of individual policies today because I know there's such a large range of things we care about. And I always want to recognize each and every one of you. You know, so many people are just content to sit on the sidelines of democracy and to never even consider being a part of the advocacy making, policy making process.
No, I didn't.
And so I honor and celebrate and appreciate each and every one of you for having this conversation and, you know, really embracing, either starting to embrace or have already embraced the power of you. And to again,
I need my
overcome
charger in
those-
case my tablets don't work.
Was that a question for me, Denise?
No, she was,
Okay.
I think she was dealing with, I'm just gonna, Denise, are you okay? Are you okay, Denise? Maybe she's okay. Yep, sorry for the interruption, Sarah.
No, I want to answer questions. So I didn't know if Denise had a question. So yeah, I can stop there right now. And then are there any other questions or suggestions or things that you'd like me to send along to Nathaniel?
I thought it was a really great presentation. Very informative. I guess I didn't know too much about your organization prior to the presentation.
Thank you, Sydney.
Sarah, and you know, I'm kind of you know, I'm always looking ways to educate our members. So maybe we should talk offline because I really like this presentation. I did research your website, which is wonderful. But sometimes what projects are you more focused on right now? And see how the disability community can get involved. And I think that's where we can probably start collaborating, because from your presentation during the Partners in Policy a couple of weeks back, that was wonderful. And I think that everyone in the community should be able to know women's health, be able to advocate for their health, because there's so many levels of women's health. There's so many levels of men's health, but how to advocate for that. And what message does your organization want to pass along to People Plus Wisconsin so that we can spread it to congressmen and go with that? I think that's the perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you asked, I created an organization based on, you know, motivation to address women's health legislation, especially around reproductive rights. And it's something I care very deeply about, but I think the work that we do can be related to any number of issues. I mean, I have 7,000 emails in my inbox right now because I'm not an expert on everything, right? And there are so many things I care about even outside of women's health. And so I think I might have mentioned to some of you, my stepbrother is 36 years old and he has autism and is nonverbal. And so we often, are looking for ways to address the challenges that he and my family face when he can't necessarily advocate for himself right now. And so, it may not seem like, again, maybe what's impacting Matthew doesn't seem like a women's health issue. But I mentioned on that call, I've been really concerned. My stepmom and my dad are fortunately retired, where Matthew was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks straight with pneumonia in the ICU. And they had to be with him 24/7 because he cannot communicate. And so the idea that paid leave is one of those things that is not just a women's health issue. I mean, it's an issue about all of us trying to have financial security when we need to take time off to care for ourselves or a child or a parent or a loved one. And so I want people to understand that, I appreciate you inviting me in, Nathaniel. I know people could think, oh, that's not an issue that I care about, or that's not an issue I'm as worried about. But I hope, again, the work that we do in helping to inform, involve, and inspire people to be effective advocates for change is applicable to any of the things that we care about. And there's not, so many times too, it's not just one thing that's driving our passion or driving our engagement. It's the intersectionality of things. And so I should tell you, Nathaniel, we're looking at maybe rebranding and broadening out our scope in 2023 and not just be focused on women's health. Okay. Because sometimes it seems like the more important work to be done right now is to help get more people to overcome the barriers that keep them from going into that advocacy making kitchen, that keep them from voting, that keep them from knowing their legislators on any given issue. Maybe it's more about building that power and overcoming the barriers of democracy.
That's what I was thinking through this whole presentation. And I was wondering if we can get some of the advocates to help you brainstorm that vision. And because I think that's the next step to grow your organization, because I think it's plain language, I think it's examples, and I think it's policies. So how can we put those all in a bowl of soup and and make them become easier to understand? And I think that's the main objective through this whole meeting.
I mean, and if anybody's passionate specifically around, women's health and reproductive rights, I mean, something that I've been very involved in, it really has bothered me that anybody presenting with a mental or physical disability is often seen as not needing sexual education or sexual services, or is not sexual. And it drives me absolutely insane. These assumptions are made, and then we don't meet people where they're at in terms of, providing the kind of, maybe it's not a bill, but maybe it's a system, right, in which we take away that dignity and that identity. And I know my dad was a coach for Special Olympics, and, nobody helped one of his athletes get the preventative care, and she ended up being sexually assaulted and got pregnant. And there, like I said, there's room inside the women's health, big W, big H women's health space. But again, I'm glad to come to any table, any conversation, and help whatever it is that you care about, figure out how to be part of the conversation, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense, Sarah. I think it's just because we have to meet at OWN's will. What I'm saying is that we have to meet them, what do you want to work on? And we have to get it done. There's no excuses. Because we have the supporters, we have the educators, And I think that it's very difficult, but it's rewarding at the same time. And when you get the small steps accomplished.
But we start, right? We got that seed. We're ready to plant it. And there's resources out there, and we just got to figure out how to tap into that, and again, not feel alone in that garden.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for everything today. I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you've done and in the future. And I hope this experience was wonderful to you. I've learned so much from this discussion. It was perfect. It was perfect. It plants. We have to learn about everything. We do, because you never know what's going to affect an individual. And I hope that this PowerPoint goes to a lot of organizations too. And I just wish you the best too, Sarah. You've done a lot of work.
Well, now I feel bad. I mean, I'm honored and I'm so grateful to each and every one of you, but I did a lot of talking today. And if you want to, switch it and have another conversation where you just share with me, I would love that. Like, let me shut up for once and let me listen to your insight.
Yeah, and you know what? We should probably have that. We should probably have that scheduled, because I think that how do we want this conversation to go? And because I think there's a lot of information here, Sarah, honestly, a lot. And I just want to make sure that each voice is getting recognized. So how do we make that possible? And how do we, because I think that is the next step, is so that each of the advocates are able to have a voice and go and making sure that they're heard and accomplish their short-term and long-term goals.
Yeah, let me know. That is everything right now. That is how we're going to move forward in a positive way.
Okay, well, thank you, Sarah, for everything. Do you
Yeah.
have anything to
Thank
say,
you.
Cindy?
Yeah, I was gonna agree. That's a great idea for a discussion or a speaker series, is having the advocates talk and then Sarah ask us questions too.
Yeah, it'd be like a peer mentoring, like a what is it called? What is it called, Cindy? I forgot what the format is. But anyway, thank you again, Sarah, for everything. Denise, do you have any questions? Or Larry, do you have any questions?
Well, you know where to find me, Nathaniel. Everybody else, feel free to contact me anytime. Oh, I didn't share this screen. There's the last slide. Cute little monkey. Okay. And I'll share this whole PowerPoint with you, Nathaniel. If anybody wants to reach out, just let me know. And I'm so excited for these conversations, and I don't want them to end. Let's keep them going.
Yes, thank you again, Sarah.
All right, everybody be well. Take care.
Yep, bye now.